My name's Scott. I'm an addict.
Hey, Scott.
You'd think that after 5 years, like, the nerves would finally just, like, go away, you know, and I would just come in here and just rock this shit and then, just blow everyone away, but that's not the case. Still get pretty nervous. It's funny because I crave attention, you know. My whole life, I just wanted attention. And then as soon as I get it, I hate it, you know. Like I'm terrified of it, you know. All eyes on me. I get uncomfortable. I feel insecure. I feel like, you know, I feel naked, you know, or I feel like I don't deserve it. But I crave it, you know, like my actions, whether I'm trying to be funny or I'm trying to impress people or I go out of my way above and beyond to try to get people's attention. And it's funny how the way that I work. I'm a very complex person, and I often confuse myself. And I do remember being new and like not being able to put, you know, sentences, you know, paragraphs together in my mind without just hopping all over the place because I was so scatterbrained and I'd been getting high for so long, and I had cut everyone off, you know. I had stopped communicating with people. I didn't, you know, getting honest, sharing what was going on with me, just opening up and putting my stuff out there was completely foreign. I had never done that my whole life, and you know, you get nervous, you know, coming in. Like, this is a really uncomfortable thing, you know. This is not. People don't just come in here and are totally comfortable with this way of life that we talk about, and you don't just pick it up like that. And it's something that takes practice. It takes being uncomfortable but doing it anyway. So yeah, yesterday I celebrated 5 years clean. And I have a service position right now, and that's the RCM, which is the regional committee member, and a lot of you may not know what that means. And it's kind of like a GSR, and you may not know what that means either. But I'm the representative of our area, you know, and I was able to be at the business, you know, function yesterday that's kind of like area, but at a regional level for the state of Florida, and represent our area and carry, you know, what we do here. And tell them about it, you know, what we're doing in H&I, you know, the new institutions that we're going into, what PR's doing, trying to get little, you know, new like posters on buses and stuff like that. I'm able to go and talk about like how our area's activities subcommittee is like kicking ass, you know, like we are putting on all kinds of cool events, like we are having fun in recovery, and I'm able to go and share that with the other areas that are in the state. And it's a privilege. A lot of the times, like, you know, of course, it's something I have to write this report and I have to do all this crap that I don't want to do, you know, but every time that I do it, I'm so grateful that I did, and I'm so thankful that I've been given the opportunity to get clean, to stay clean, to be of service, to do something different, because I was so lost, you know, and I didn't know. I didn't have a clue how to live. I wasn't, you know, I was just existing. I felt completely alone, and my solution was to get high, you know, was to escape, to get rid of those feelings of insecurity and not feeling a part of and feeling different. And this Narcotics Anonymous, I finally have found a place where I feel a part of, a place where I belong. People that understand what it's like to say, like to not want to use, but to do it anyway because I just had to. Like, I couldn't share that with people because I thought I was fucking crazy, which I realized that when I got here I was, but fortunately there was a solution, you know, that the disease could be arrested and that recovery was possible, and then I could find a new way of life. So I was able to go there and say, you know, yesterday that, you know, they asked who's celebrating, has anyone celebrated any anniversaries between the last time we met and now, and I was actually able to say, you know what, today I have 5 years clean. And, you know, I'm just thankful. I'm thankful to God, and I'm thankful to the program and everyone who's helped me along the way, you know. Because it's been a challenge. It's been a journey. I've struggled, you know, but I'm persistent, you know, and I keep coming back, and I haven't given up, you know, in the sense that I've given up on recovery. I've given up in a lot of ways that my disease likes to fester, and I like to isolate, like Alan was talking about, and get into these other obsessions and compulsions that this disease of addiction, that's the way that it is, that's the way that it lives, that's how it is in me, is I think about something and I can't stop thinking about it, and the solution, or just once I start doing it, I can't stop. And that's happened in a lot of areas of my life, and people have been able to help me along the way, because I'll fall into that, but I come back to the solution, and I feel like that's what saved my ass. Is the solution to me hasn't been drugs. The solution, when I'm in pain and when I'm suffering and when I'm hurting, the solution is always, in the end, it hasn't been drugs, it's been Narcotics Anonymous. I've been low and I felt down, but where I go is I end up back here. And you know, I can handle a great deal of pain. I put myself through so much unnecessary pain, but when I finally decide to surrender and let go, I know what I need to do. I just, you know, I fight it. I'm rebellious nature. So I guess that's kind of I don't know, I always seem to start out with a little bit of an introduction, but, you know, growing up, there's a very common theme that I hear in Narcotics Anonymous between us and addicts, and that's not feeling a part of, and feeling different, and feeling like I didn't quite belong, you know. And you know, I was a very shy kid. I felt like I wasn't attractive enough. I didn't like who I was. I was shy, you know, and I was quiet, and I just felt like I was always afraid I was going to say something stupid, that I was going to embarrass myself. You know, I struggled with this, you know, these defects. You know, my pride and my ego are so strong inside of me that I did everything I could to protect, you know, this image and who I am. And I guess my solution was to just not talk a whole lot, you know, because I was always afraid of that insecurity, of me doing something dumb, that I wasn't good enough, and you know, I'd shy away from sports or particular activities where I'd feel like I wasn't the best. You know, I felt comfortable where I was, like, you know, one of the best, but if I was never willing to try anything new, to be, you know, to show that I wasn't good enough, to reveal that I was weak or whatever. So everything I did was to protect my pride and my ego. And I've learned these things here in the rooms. I was oblivious to this is the way that I live my life. I was just reacting. I had no idea what was going on. It was a defense mechanism, you know, to get through life. I was just trying to figure it out. And of course, I tried to figure it out all on my own, because of those same defects, not wanting to ask people for help, to try new things, to expose myself, you know. I put myself through a lot of uncomfortable situations, you know. I just had to, I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and there were distinct moments where I started to shut down even more and more, where I'd get made fun of, you know, and so I'd reserve myself and I'd hold back even more, and I switched schools a lot as a kid, and I never really could keep a consistent group of friends. So I always felt kind of like an outsider. One of the things that affected me the most that I didn't realize when I was a kid is when my parents got a divorce. And I saw my dad as this, powerhouse, this guy who didn't cry, this guy who was the strongest person I ever knew, guy who I was actually afraid of, even at that point. Someone that he never showed a weakness, And, I thought that was kind of how I was supposed to be, how I was supposed to live. To not talk about feelings, to not talk about things that were bothering me, to just suck it up and move on. Just suck it up and move on. And, he did that so well. And when my mom decided that to get a divorce, I saw him at his lowest. We moved into this brand new big, home, and we'd only lived there like 6 or 9 months, and I had to see my dad go from like the man, to low, and lived in like this little apartment where he was paying, monthly, and and he was just so broken, so broken and sad, and it was hard to see. And, I was so mad at my mom for doing that, to him. So, a lot of my childhood and most of my life, I've treated my mom very poorly. I've taken out a lot of my inner frustrations and stuff on her. And, she's also allowed me to do that. So it was just, I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. I never learned, that sharing about what was going on with me in my life was a solution to my problem. For some reason, my mind just thought that the solution was not to say anything at all and to keep it to myself and just figure it out. And but I couldn't, I hated the fact that my whole life that I was a sensitive person. That little things that people would say or little, whatever, that those things bothered me. I hated that about myself. I hated that I would get upset easily or I just hated the fact that I was sensitive. And I'd hide that at all costs as well. And eventually drugs, I numbed me out to where I started to feel less and less. And, it was a way to go through life, just not feeling. So I met a group of friends in high school, and I finally, met these people who thought I was cool, and we, played video games, and that was, I found like this common bond with people, and I finally felt like a part of, and they were a few years older than me, and it was kind of life-changing because I was able to just focus on one particular activity, and my grades and all my stuff, I just threw all that stuff out the window. And it wasn't important anymore because I had finally found a place where I belonged, or I had an obsession, this video games were just like that was it. That was, for me, that was an ultimate escape before I started using. Like I said, they were a few years older than me, so around my, I didn't start getting high until between my junior and senior year of high school is when I first started drinking and getting high. And I remember the first time that we had a party at my friend's parents' condo, and I didn't know what was going on. I was just all about it because they were, excited for me. They were happy to see me with them, and I was happy to be there, and be a part of. And so I did it, and I blacked out. I completely blacked out. I don't remember any of it. And I found it. I had found just another solution to my problem, and so I started taking advantage of that. And then my parents were divorced, like I had said, so I'd be spending my mom would go out of town and visit her boyfriend, and I would be at her house, and I'd just throw parties at her house, and people would come over, and like, I felt fucking cool, I felt like I was somebody. People wanted me around. And I didn't consider whether they were using me or not. That didn't matter, People wanted to be my friend. And it was awesome, and I loved it, and so I got that attention that I so craved, at that time in my life, it was great. Like partying and doing that, living that lifestyle, I loved it. I had so much fun. It was a blast. Like it truly was. But I had no idea I was an addict. I didn't have a clue what the future held for me. And I don't think any of us really do. I've realized that I was an addict when I came here. I knew why there was something wrong with me my whole life. I asked myself, like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I just never could accept myself as I was. I always felt like this dis-ease, I was always just, there's something wrong, and I found that, that I suffer from this disease of addiction, and Narcotics Anonymous has taught me how to deal with that, how to deal with feelings, deal with these defects that I live with, and how to just live a different life. So I went through those phases, and I went into college, and I got arrested at some point for possession, and I had to come to these meetings, and it was a long, drawn-out process with lawyers and stuff, and I came here and I did that whole thing, and but like I said, it was still fun. I was having a great time. It was a blast. I just had to come here, and I wasn't listening to anything. That's something I had to do. And I was living in Gainesville at the time, and this is just my story. This is just what happened. Growing up, my parents, we never went to church. We never did any of that. I didn't know anything about God. I didn't believe in God. I never thought about God, ever. It wasn't it wasn't ever a part of my life. And I had this experience where, like I had said, like up to this very point, I had never second guessed about my lifestyle or the way I was living, even though I had gotten arrested. Like, I had never thought that, maybe I'm doing something wrong, changing my grades and, online and sending them to my parents and doing whatever I had to do to get by. Like, that kind of stuff wasn't red flags to me that showed that I had a problem. I had never second guessed my actions. It was just I just did it. I just did it. If it felt good and I was covering my ass, or I did whatever it took to just keep getting high and like keep everyone off my back, kind of, and just to do my goal was just do my own thing, whatever, at all costs. But I had this moment, and I was in my car, and all of a sudden, I felt this power. I felt something greater than me. I felt the presence of God was there with me out of nowhere, and He was just there. It was just there, and I was terrified. But at the same time, I felt like all of a sudden I wasn't alone anymore. That it was going to be okay. And there were these songs on the radio, and they were speaking to me, man, and all of a sudden I just knew it. And from that moment on, I carried around this guilt and this shame every time I used, like I was running. I could never forget any longer that what I was doing was wrong, that getting high and living this lifestyle was not okay. Because I knew all of a sudden that there was something out there that said that everything was going to be all right, But I was in the grip, man. I was in the grip of my addiction, and I needed more than just this one moment to change my life. That moment actually made the next, 2.5 years of my life hell. because I couldn't forget it. I couldn't bury it, you know? And so I'd go along and I'd get clean for a little while, and I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to use, you know? And that didn't work for me. You know, I'd have periods of time, and I went out to Texas for a little while. You know, I moved to Charlotte, and I changed my geographical locations, and that's the solution to my problem. I need a new group of friends, new people, a new fresh start. That's going to make things different, and it didn't, you know, because I found what I needed. And when the obsession returned, the compulsion was right there behind it, because I had no foundation, I had no stability, I had no principles. I had no idea what to do with that. You know, it's funny because I feel as addicts we're really strong, you know, strong people. Like we've been to bitter ends. But we're weak when it comes to our own mind, you know, and our own feelings, like weak people. Like I give in to myself and things I don't want to do. I'm a weak person when it comes to my own mind and what it's crazy. So the geographical changes and all this stuff and trying different substances and new groups of people and it just I was just running from the problem and I didn't have a clue and things kept getting worse. You know, I got arrested again and the shit, you know, it happens. It's what happened. We all have different stories. You know. But thank God, you know, everyone in this room ended up here because, you know, until I came here, I didn't have a chance. You know, so I went through all of that and I decided, you know, once again I was going to get clean and I'd use again, and I decided I was going to get clean and I was going to use again, and then I'd come to, you know, a few meetings a week, and that was going to be enough for me, and it wasn't enough, and until I was willing to take all of the suggestions, I couldn't stay clean, you know. I couldn't work Scott's program, Scott's NA program. It did not work. I had to work the Narcotics Anonymous program, a program that's been proven by thousands and thousands of addicts all over the world that works, that people come and they get clean and they find a new way to live. And, you know, I distinctly remember sitting at the end of the table over there and just crying, you know, because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know where else to go, and I was so desperate and felt so alone, and I was just sad and tired of living. And I didn't know where else to go, so I came back here, and, you know, I started doing the things that was suggested right off the bat, you know. I went to a meeting for the first day every night, you know, for every day for the first 90 days. I say that because it was like the 77th or 76th day, and I was over in Tampa, and I had this plan, you know, I was over there hanging out, and I was going to go to this meeting, and it was on the meeting list, and I'm going, right, and I get there, and it's not there, and I start panicking, you know, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you know, I need to make a meeting every day for 90 days, and that's how much I cared about my recovery, you know, at that point. I truly did. So I picked up the phone and I called my sponsor and I was like, I went to this meeting and it's not there and I don't know what to do, and, you know, I blew it, you know, another thing in my life, you know, everything that I tried in my life up to that point, I had failed, you know. I'd try all these, you know, I felt like just a failure, you know, and so I was freaking out and I gave him a call, you know, and he asked me what a meeting was, and I was like, well, you know, I usually typically say I don't know because whatever. Anyway, so I don't know, you know, those things we go to a meeting. It's 2 or more addicts sharing their recovery was his response. And we talked, you know, on my way home about recovery, you know, and it was that effort, you know, just that willingness to try and to get to the meeting that I still need today to keep me moving forward, you know, and I don't always have it. But I damn sure had it in the beginning. Now, you know, there's no doubt about that. desperation and pain are hell of motivators, you know. So, you know, I did that, and then I joined a subcommittee, you know, they told me to get a service position. So I got a service position, and a lot of people join H&I in the beginning when they're new, but I went the PR route. I ended up doing that because my sponsor was in PR, you know, and he kind of drugged me along, took me through the process, you know, and it was just, you know, I stopped doing things my own way, and I started listening to what other people had to say, and I stopped trying to figure it all out on my own. And once I started doing that, my life started to get better, you know. And so we'd go to PR, and there were, I wanted this thing, man. I wanted to change. So I started looking at what other people did, people that I respected, whether it was my sponsor or other people that shared in meetings. You know, we'd go to PR, and you know, my sponsor and I, we both smoked at the time, and you know, I would throw my cigarettes out the window, and he would, you know, kind of pinch them up and squish them up and then put them in his cigarette pack or whatever it was, and put it in his pocket. And it was those kinds of things in the beginning that I'm like, you know what? I don't really feel so good about doing this anymore, about doing those little things, you know, for so long, you know, I just kept doing things that I wasn't proud of, that brought on shame and guilt, you know, and that stuff had to stop. You know, whenever I kept doing things that I didn't feel good about, I had to stop doing those things, you know, so I admired that, and I started doing that, and I felt good about those little things, and you know, and those, you know, they helped me along the way, and it's been a journey. It has, and so we go to PR, and there was a time where, like, my sponsor and I were living together at the time, and which you know, I think it was a blessing in disguise. I didn't enjoy waking up in the morning, getting ready for work, and the first thing that I hear someone say to me is like, "Good morning," you know, right when I walk out of my bedroom door, because he's got his old desk right there, you know, and I see his face, like, looking at me, just, "Good morning," you know, and getting up, and he's all cheery, you know, and I'd been up, you know, I'd only been up for like 20 minutes because I was still rushing to work, you know. He'd been up for probably who knows how long, an hour and a half, and drinking his coffee, doing his thing, you know, and it was just, but the reason why I started to get this resentment, you know, and I started to hate it, was because the way I was living, you know. I was stuck in the middle of my 4-step, and I'd been procrastinating for a long time. And I'd pick it up, and I'd put it back down, and I'd pick it up, and I'd put it back down, and I'd pick it up and put it back down. And it was a really painful process, a very emotional process, looking at this stuff, but not really just moving through it, you know, getting to the 5th step to share it all and get it out, you know. I just kind of sat in it, and the stopping and the starting really hurt. You know, so I started picking up on all these little things to escape with, you know, whether it was relationship or it was video games or it was whatever activity I could to escape through, I used it, you know, and so it was like I felt more, I guess, shame and guilt. It was harder to just live that kind of lifestyle and not feel good about what I was doing when my sponsor was living with me, you know. I kind of can deal with myself all right, you know. I'm pretty used to creating my own shame and guilt and doing all the crap that I don't really want to do just to get that escape. You know, I'm all right at that. But it was harder when I was living with my sponsor, you know, to be okay about the things that I was doing. And so we there were times where, you know, I just talk about a little bit about the willingness and just kind of what it takes. And there was a it was time to go to PR, and him and I were like the only people in PR at the time, right? Like there'd been 3 of us for like 3 months or something like that, and then the PR chair let us know that she wasn't going to be there, and it was just him and I sitting at the house like, really, we're about to drive over to Winter Haven so you and I can just talk about like PR and what we got going on, like and do the concepts and all the stuff that we do during the meeting? Are we about to freaking do that? Really? And he's like, yeah, we are, because we made a commitment to go and to do it. And I hated it, and I didn't understand it at the time, and I didn't believe in it, and I thought it was bullshit. But when we got there, this guy named Todd shows up, who we've never seen before, who had just biked his way from Legoland, which I don't know how many miles it was. But he was like, I'm trying to, I've been wanting to come to PR, I just haven't found the time to do it. And, I haven't seen him since. But that's part of why we do what we do in making and keeping commitments. And it didn't make, a lot of the things that I do don't really necessarily make sense to me at the time. But looking back, I have a better understanding, or it does make sense, So I moved along and working through the steps, and we were still living together, and so I was working my 5th step with him, and we'd meet at the kitchen, we'd meet at the dining room table, and like on a Saturday, and start digging into this 4th step and sharing my 5th step, and we did that for several weeks. And there's times where I would bail, because I was busy doing something else. There was times where I just wasn't ready, and it's weird because he's sitting right here, so it's kind of, it feels a little different, but I don't know whether to say sponsor or Jack or this fucking guy, but he's never like let me down. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. And I've learned so much from that, and I value that. Being able to truly trust someone and have that full belief in someone is what I experienced in the 5th step. The discussions that we've had and what I've shared has not been shared. I thought that there's no way I could ever share some of the shame and the guilt and some of the things I did in my childhood and in my, in active addiction. But we built this trust and that I hadn't had with anyone else, and I was able to let that out and experience some freedom by sharing in the 5th step, and it was life-changing because I had all these resentments. Typically, if it was towards guys, it was typically because I was jealous or I was envious, or they had the prettier girlfriend, or they had the nicer car, or they had the better, they look better, the better looks, the whatever it was. I had all these resentments towards them for those reasons, or maybe they could fight or they defend themselves, and I had all this baggage I was carrying around, all this anger and unnecessary resentments just because I couldn't accept who I was, or I wasn't okay with me being me. Everything I didn't have, I just kind of assumed that other people had, and I wanted it, and whether it was resentments and then family, looking at that and looking at my history with my family and hurting them, and being able to just let it out and put it all on paper and to share it was an absolute game changer, So I moved in, to the 6th step, and and I was on fire for recovery after finishing that fifth step. I felt a freedom. It was go, it was move on. It was let's get going again, So I moved through the sixth step and took, went, I just hammered that out. And the seventh step, like I was ready, and then it came again where I was kind of going back in the fourth step and I had to make a list of all the people that I had wronged and look at these potential amends, and then a lot of fear came up, and it was hard, and it was similar to the fourth step, so I procrastinated a lot. And it's just tough looking at the harm you've caused, but it's necessary. I had to do it. I had to get it out and look at it and face the reality of what I had done if I was going to make the amends. How am I supposed to make amends if I'm not exactly sure, like, what I'm making amends for, And it was tough. It was really hard, but, it took me a while, but I did it, and then I got to start making some amends, and I've done some things that I never thought were possible, like having an intimate conversation with my dad, sharing with him. I remember in active addiction, he came to me one time, and he's like, are you stealing? He approached me about his money jar. He had this big, jar of money, and like he'd put more money in, but like it wasn't going anywhere, because I was taking money out. And so it didn't quite add up to him, and he confronted me about it, and I absolutely denied it, bold-faced lie, like denial, like I did not do that, whatever it took. I couldn't accept, the person that I was, the actions that I was taking, I couldn't face that. I was I couldn't, at that point in my life, I just couldn't. And, I was able to. It took me a while, and I had a lot of fear to have that conversation, but, I finally I knew, you see, all this, along this way, there's just things that I know that I have to do. And once I know that I have to do them, there's no escaping it. The thought keeps coming back. There's no running anymore. I know the truth, and I know what I need to do to learn and to grow, to stay clean. And it's getting uncomfortable and doing things that I don't want to do. And no matter how long I procrastinate and I put it off, it's going to be there. And it's something I'm going to have to address at some point. So I finally asked him, hey, can we go to breakfast and can we talk? And we met, and, before work, and, and I shared with him about, that time that I said bold-faced lied to you, and I told you, and I did that, and I shared with him other actions that I had done, and I shared just my shame and my guilt, and it was so powerful. Like, I was so grateful after that. Like, along the way, I continuously have to keep praying for courage, because I'm scared as shit to do a lot of the things that still come on my plate, and so how much time do I have left? What does that mean?
A little.
Okay.
Wrap it up, man.
I want to share something that, and it's hard for me to even share it out. Because, this, there was a home group member that's no longer with us. And I didn't realize I was getting close to the end of the time. I just know that I wanted to talk about this. And he was a part of this home group, and he passed away, I think, at the end of last year, at the beginning of this year. and I had found out that he was in a coma. He was no longer responsive, like he was out, and I had a decision to make whether or not I was gonna walk through the fear and uncomfortability of going up there and visiting him in the hospital, because I knew it was the right thing to do. And he wasn't conscious, and I'm sitting there and I'm praying, and I decided to go up there, and I was able to kind of make peace with him going, and hold his hand and say a prayer, and it was fucking hard, but this program has changed me as a person, and there's no way that before working the steps and doing this stuff that I would have been able to walk through that and have the courage to not be afraid of what other people think, but just to be present in that moment and care about someone else that much. And that's just a spiritual awakening. Like, this program has changed my life and changed who I am. And I'm so thankful for that. I truly am, because I can finally say that, I'm proud of the person that I am. And if it wasn't for God and my sponsor and the rooms and this fellowship and everything that's happened along the way, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be that guy, And I'm grateful for that. So, that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.